My daughter-in-law threw me out of the dinner table. But what happened after made her cry. I'll never forget that night. The smell of rosemary roasted lamb still lingers in my memory. Not because of how it tasted, but because of the bitter sting that came right after. It was a Saturday evening, the kind that should have felt warm and full. My son, Eric, had invited me to his home for a family dinner. He and his wife, Claire, had just moved into their new house. Modern, minimalist, with those glossy marble countertops that practically scream look, but don't touch. I had knitted a cream shawl for Claire as a housewarming gift. It took me weeks, and I wrapped it in brown craft paper with a green ribbon. I remember smoothing the edges, hoping she'd like it, hoping she'd see me. The table was set like something out of a magazine. Matte black plates, gold-rimmed glasses, tall white candles. Claire always had a taste for drama. The napkins were folded into origami birds. I didn't dare touch mine for fear of messing it up. When I arrived, Claire greeted me at the door with that tight smile she always gives. Just enough to be polite, never enough to feel warm. "Oh, you made it," she said, like she hadn't actually expected me to come. Eric gave me a quick hug. "Hey, Mom," he mumbled, already turning back toward the kitchen. I sat at the far end of the long oak table. Claire had placed name cards, and mine was at the very end, next to the high chair for little Sophie, my granddaughter. Not quite at the kids' table, but not truly part of the circle either. Dinner began with laughter that didn't quite include me. Claire's parents were there too, talking about their latest cruise. Her mother wore a diamond necklace that caught the light every time she laughed. Claire's father made a joke about how some people just don't understand modern dining etiquette. Claire giggled, sipping her wine. I tried to join in. "This lamb is delicious, Claire. Reminds me of the ones I used to make for Easter back home." She didn't even look at me, just passed the salt to her mother, as if I hadn't spoken. I kept smiling. I always do. When dessert was served, a lavender panna cotta with candied lemon, too fancy for my old tongue. I tried once more. "I brought a little something for the house," I said softly, sliding the wrapped shawl across the table toward her. Claire opened it, unfolded it slowly. Her eyes scanned the shawl like it was a used dish rag. "Oh," she said, that's thoughtful." She handed it to the nanny, who placed it on a side table behind her. "No thank you, no smile. Just discarded like me." I swallowed the lump in my throat and reached for my water. That's when it happened. Claire turned to me, her voice sharp and echoing down the table. "Could you please not use that glass? Those are part of our new set. I'd prefer if you used one of the spares." The room fell silent. I looked at my hand, frozen around the glass. My fingers trembled slightly. "I'm sorry," I said, confused. Claire stood. She was still smiling, but it was cold, surgical. "I just think it's best. These are crystal, and sometimes accidents happen." She glanced at her mother, who gave a smug little nod. Eric said nothing. Nothing. I stood, heart pounding in my chest like a drum. I looked at my son, hoping, pleading, for him to say something, to defend me. But he just stared down at his plate. And then Claire did something I'll never forget. She walked around the table, took my plate, and said, "It's okay. We finished eating. You can sit in the living room now." Like I was a burden, like I didn't belong at the table I helped raise her husband to sit at. I looked around. No one met my eyes, so I nodded. I picked up my purse and my dignity, and I walked out of that dining room, head held high. I sat in the living room alone, listening to the clinking of cutlery and laughter from the other room. My hands folded in my lap, still trembling slightly. But what they didn't know was that they had just made a mistake they would deeply regret. And what happened next? Well, let's just say it changed everything. I stared at the flickering flames in the fireplace, the heat never quite reaching my bones. The soft murmurs from the dining room became distant, like echoes from another world, a world I no longer belonged to. My fingers traced the edge of my purse, over and over. It was a simple brown leather bag, worn smooth with time. Inside was a tin of mints, a handkerchief, and a photograph. One I kept with me always. Eric, age 8, missing his front teeth, standing beside me with a gold paper crown on his birthday. He used to hold my hand so tight at parties. Back then, I was his whole world. Now I was a nuisance, a glassbreaker, an embarrassment. Time passed slowly. The laughter from the dining room turned into the soft clatter of plates being cleared. I heard Claire's voice, sharp and fast, giving orders to the nanny and the housekeeper. Then, footsteps. Claire walked into the living room, holding a small plate with a single macaroon on it. "We had extras," she said, placing it on the coffee table in front of me. I looked up at her. "Thank you." She didn't respond. Just stood there, arms crossed over her silk blouse. Ivory, with gold buttons. It probably cost more than my entire month's pension. "I hope you understand," she began. "This isn't personal. We're just trying to establish a certain atmosphere here." "An atmosphere without me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She paused. "Not without you. Just adjusted. This isn't your home, after all. And I need Sophie to grow up around elegance and order, not cluttered old habits." I blinked. Cluttered. "You still send her rag dolls and wooden toys. We're trying to cultivate a more refined aesthetic." I could feel it. The invisible line she was drawing. Me on one side, their new life on the other. I didn't argue. I simply nodded. Arguing never works when someone has already decided you're not worth listening to. Later that evening, when I finally gathered the courage to say goodbye, Eric walked me to the door. I paused before stepping out. "Did I do something wrong, Eric?" He looked down, avoiding my gaze. "Claire just wants things a certain way. Try not to take it personally." That's when I said it, not out of anger, but heartbreak. "I raised you to be kind, not to be silent." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Just opened the door. The wind hit me as I stepped outside. Cold October air that cut through my shawl. The same shawl Claire hadn't bothered to thank me for. I didn't cry on the way home. I'm not sure why. Maybe the tears were too proud to fall. But the next day, something inside me shifted. I sat in my small kitchen, the same one Eric grew up in. Floral curtains, chipped teacups, the smell of cinnamon from the oatmeal on the stove. I looked around at the life I'd built. Modest, simple, but full of love. And I thought, they don't get to erase me. That afternoon, I took out a box I hadn't opened in years. It was heavy, lined with velvet. Inside were old documents, letters, and a sealed envelope I had once given to Eric, one he'd tucked away without much thought. It was time. I made some calls, a few to my lawyer, one to my cousin Elaine, who still worked at the local paper, and then I sat down to write a letter. Not a letter of revenge, but one of truth, because there were things Claire didn't know, things Eric had forgotten, Like the fact that the down payment for their first apartment came from me. Or that when Eric lost his job for 7 months, I was the one quietly covering their grocery bills, slipping cash into his jacket pocket so he wouldn't feel ashamed. Or that the house they'd now bragged about, the one they hosted dinner parties in, well, I had a role in that too, a bigger one than anyone knew. It's funny, isn't it? How people rewrite history, how quickly they forget the hands that held them when they were weak. 2 days later, Claire called me. Her voice was tense. "Did you speak to someone at the Heritage Women's Journal?" I smiled softly. "Why do you ask?" "Because they contacted Eric today, asking for an interview. Something about hidden matriarchs and unsung family foundations. Your name came up." "Oh yes," I said. "They wanted to feature women who quietly supported generations without recognition." I thought it was time to tell my story. Silence. Then, "You didn't ask our permission." I didn't know I needed it. I could practically hear the heat rising in her voice. "Well, it's not exactly the image we're trying to present. People might get the wrong idea." "The wrong idea?" I repeated. "That you're, well, more involved than you were." And that's when I said it, slowly, firmly. "I didn't ask for credit, Claire, but I will not be erased." Click. She hung up. But that wasn't the end. Because what came next, what happened the night the article was published, was something Claire could never have predicted. And when she finally realized the truth, her eyes welled with tears right there in front of me. The article was published on a Thursday. The headline read, "The Women Who Built Without Praise, Unsung Matriarchs of the Modern Family." My name appeared in the first paragraph. It wasn't a scandal piece, not the kind Claire feared, but it told the truth. About how I'd raised Eric alone after his father passed. About how I worked nights at the diner and still made it to every school play, every dentist appointment. How I saved for years to help him buy his first car, and later supported him quietly through his rough patches. And how I'd used my late husband's life insurance, the money I had never once touched for myself, to help Eric and Claire secure the house they now proudly called their own. There was even a picture. Me in my garden, hands in the dirt, smiling softly. The caption read, "Margaret, 73, says she never asked for gratitude, just a seat at the table she helped set." The piece went viral. Messages flooded in. Old neighbors, former colleagues, strangers from around the country. People recognized the story in their own lives. Grandmothers, mothers, aunts who gave and were never truly seen. Claire didn't call that day, or the next, but Eric did. He showed up at my house with that same boyish expression he used to wear when he'd done something wrong, but didn't know how to say it. I was in the kitchen rolling dough for apple pie, the counter dusted with flour, my hands steady now. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "Hi, sweetheart." He stood there for a second, then stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't the quick, distracted kind. It was real. "I read the article," he said, still holding me. I nodded. "I figured you would." "I'm sorry. For everything." I didn't say anything right away. I just kept kneading the dough. "Claire's upset," he added. "I imagine she is." He paused, watching me work. "You should have told us about the money." I looked up at him. "Would it have changed anything?" He didn't answer. That Saturday, they hosted another dinner. This time, a charity fundraiser for Claire's Art Foundation. Big event. Dozens of guests. Press. Photographers. Claire had it all arranged, and she asked me to come. I almost said no. But then I thought, no. This time, I will show up, not quietly, not as a shadow in the corner. I would wear my best dress, the sapphire blue one Eric bought me for my birthday years ago, and I would walk into that house with the grace of a woman who has weathered storms and still stands. When I arrived, the valet opened my door like I was royalty. I could hear the music inside, soft jazz, laughter, glasses clinking. Claire saw me from across the room. Her smile faltered for just a moment, then returned. "Margaret," she said, kissing me on both cheeks. "I'm glad you came." I smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." The house was glowing, gold chandeliers, waiters in black vests, appetizers on silver trays. Claire was in her element, ivory gown, hair swept up, diamonds at her ears. The crowd adored her. She made a speech halfway through about beauty and legacy and the importance of art in family values. Then, right before dessert, something unexpected happened. The foundation chair took the microphone. "Before we close the evening," she said, "we'd like to acknowledge someone very special tonight, someone whose quiet sacrifices and strength exemplify the heart of this foundation's mission." I felt the room shift. "Please welcome Margaret Elliott." There was a pause, then applause. I stood, my hands trembling slightly, but not from fear this time, from something else. Pride. I walked up to the small platform, the lights warm on my face. "I wasn't expecting to speak," I began, "but I'm honored." I looked around the room. So many faces, many of whom hadn't even looked at me last time I sat at this table. I've always believed the true measure of love isn't in grand gestures, but in the quiet things. The casseroles dropped off without a word, the rides to school, the hands that hold you when you fail. I looked at Claire. Sometimes love is invisible, until you try to erase it. There was a silence in the room. No one moved. I smiled softly. I don't need a title or a spotlight. I just needed a place at the table. Thunderous applause followed. Even Claire clapped, though her hands were slow, her eyes glassy. As I stepped down, I saw her turn away quickly, pressing her fingers to her cheek. She was crying. Later that night, I found her in the kitchen, alone, her makeup slightly smudged, her voice quiet. "I didn't realize," she said, "how much you've done for us." I nodded. "That's the thing about mothers-in-law, Claire. We don't always tell you everything. We just love, quietly." She looked down. "I'm sorry I made you feel small. You didn't make me feel anything. I know who I am. But you have the power to decide how your daughter will remember me, whether I was just the old woman in the corner or something more." Her lips trembled. "I want her to know you." "Then let her see me, truly." Claire nodded. But even then I knew it wasn't over, because what happened next, at Sophie's birthday party a month later, was the final piece. And it's what truly changed everything. Sophie's 4th birthday arrived on a crisp November morning. The house was decorated in pale pinks and golds, delicate butterflies hanging from the ceiling, and a soft white canopy draped over the gift table. Claire had spared no detail. There was a live harpist in the corner, a pastel 3-tiered cake with hand-painted sugar flowers, and individual seating cards shaped like tiny swans. And yet, this time, something was different. When I walked in, Sophie ran to me first. "Grandma Maggie!" she shouted, barreling into my legs, her little arms flung tight around me. She was wearing a dress I had sewn for her months ago, cream with tiny roses stitched into the hem. Claire had told me she'd never wear it, but here she was, spinning like a ballerina, showing it off proudly. I saved you a seat, she said, tugging my hand. At the table, right in the center, between Claire's parents and Eric, was a card that read, Grandma Maggie. Not the side room, not the couch, the center. Claire walked up behind me, holding a tray of cupcakes. I hope you like your seat, she said, a little nervousness in her voice. Sophie insisted. I turned to her. Thank you for letting her know me. She looked down, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. She deserves to. Throughout the afternoon, I watched them all. Eric helping Sophie with her party hat, Claire handing out treats, the guests mingling. But what struck me most was how often Sophie came back to sit in my lap, or bring me a sticker, or ask for another story. Like she knew, like she felt the difference. Later, as the sun dipped low and the party quieted, Claire approached me again, this time, with something in her hands. It was the shawl, the one I'd knitted. Cream with the faint scent of lavender, still folded neatly from that night I gave it to her. I never said thank you properly, she whispered. She handed it to me. I'd like you to show me how to make one. I looked at her, surprised. I've never made anything with my hands, she said. Not like this. I want Sophie to see what care looks like. I nodded, emotion rising in my throat. I'd like that. The rest of the evening passed in gentle peace. No fanfare, no speeches, no grand gestures, just moments. Small, real, precious. As I left that night, Sophie ran out with me, barefoot on the front steps. Grandma, she whispered, hugging me tight. Next time, can you stay for a sleepover? My heart swelled. Of course, sweetheart. I'd love that. And in that moment, I realized something. All the bitterness, all the exclusion, all the moments I had been cast aside. They hadn't gone to waste. They had made the truth stronger when it was finally seen. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it arrives on little feet with sticky hands, asking for a story and calling you Grandma. That's how you know it's real. Because even after the world tries to make you invisible, love remembers you. And in the end, I got my seat at the table. Not because I demanded it, but because I never stopped setting it.